I never thought a simple weekend visit to my cousin's house could leave me questioning everything I knew about family. It started on a rainy Friday afternoon when my car pulled up to the familiar driveway. The house looked the same as I remembered, bright white siding, a little garden out front, but something felt different as soon as I stepped inside. My cousin, Clara, greeted me with a warm hug. She was in her early 40s, always impeccably put together, with a laugh that could fill a room. Her son, Ethan, was sitting at the kitchen table, headphones on, completely absorbed in his tablet. He looked about 10, with dark curls falling into his eyes. Clara waved at him, and he shrugged without taking off his headphones. "I can't believe you're finally here," Clara said, pulling me into the living room. "It's been too long." I smiled, but I couldn't shake the small unease I felt. The house smelled of cinnamon and fresh laundry, perfectly ordinary. Yet, the moment I made eye contact with Ethan, there was this strange intensity in his gaze. After unpacking, we sat down for tea. Ethan lingered nearby, fidgeting with a puzzle on the floor. Every so often, he would glance up at me, and I felt this peculiar sense that he was studying me. It wasn't creepy exactly, just off. Clara began telling me about her recent projects at work, the garden, and their new dog Max. I nodded along, but my thoughts kept drifting to Ethan. Finally, she asked if I wanted to see his new treehouse. I agreed, hoping a little outdoor distraction might lighten the mood. We stepped out into the backyard. The treehouse was impressive, a 2-level wooden structure perched in the tallest oak tree, complete with a tiny rope ladder. Ethan's eyes lit up as he ran toward it, and I followed him slowly. "That's amazing, Ethan," I said. "Did you build all of this yourself?" He shook his head. "My dad helped a bit," he said, his voice quieter than usual. Then he looked up at me, directly into my eyes. "Do you ever feel like people don't see the real you?" I froze. The question was so sudden, so personal, coming from a 10-year-old. I glanced at Clara, who was busy hanging some bird feeders. She didn't seem to notice. "What do you mean?" I asked, cautiously. "I mean," Ethan said slowly, "sometimes grown-ups act like they know everything about you, but maybe they don't." He paused, studying my reaction. "Do you ever feel that way?" I blinked, unsure how to answer. I wasn't used to such direct, almost philosophical questions from a child. Before I could respond, he ran up the ladder and disappeared into the treehouse, leaving me standing there with a strange mix of curiosity and discomfort. Later that evening, after dinner, I sat in the living room scrolling on my phone, trying to distract myself. Clara was in the kitchen cleaning up, humming softly. Max was curled at my feet. But my mind kept going back to Ethan's words. It was just past 8 p.m. when a knock at the living room door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and Clara had gone upstairs to check on something. I opened the door, and Ethan was standing there in his pajamas, holding a small notebook. "I wanted to show you something," he said softly. There was a seriousness in his tone that made me uneasy. "Can I?" I nodded, and he sat beside me, opening the notebook carefully. Inside were pages filled with little sketches and sentences. Most were innocent enough, trees, animals, comic-like drawings, but one page had a single line that made my stomach tighten. "Why does she always look sad when she smiles?" I looked at him, startled. "Who wrote this?" I asked, trying to mask my surprise. Ethan shrugged. "I don't know. I just noticed." He didn't elaborate. I felt a sudden weight in my chest, a mix of worry and something I couldn't quite place. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Ethan's question over and over in my mind. Why did it feel so pointed, as if he saw something in me that even I didn't fully understand? And more importantly, why did it unsettle me so deeply? A shadow moved near the window. I turned, thinking it was Clara or Max, but it was only the swaying branches outside. My heart was still racing. And then I heard it, a quiet voice from the other side of the room, whispering my name. The whisper startled me so much that I almost dropped my phone. I blinked rapidly, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. Max stirred but didn't move, and the house was silent apart from the soft hum of the refrigerator downstairs. I got up and slowly walked toward the sound. "Ethan?" I called, my voice trembling slightly. There was no reply. The hallway was dimly lit, shadows stretching across the walls from the nightlight in the corner. Something about the quiet felt heavier than usual. I peeked into the living room. The notebook was gone. I knew I had left it on the couch when I went to grab my phone. Panic crept in. Did Ethan take it back upstairs? Or had it fallen? I crouched down and searched under the cushions. The notebook wasn't there either. A soft thump upstairs made me freeze. My pulse quickened. Clara had gone to check on a loose board she'd noticed earlier on the deck, so she wasn't upstairs. Only Ethan. Slowly, I climbed the staircase, each step creaking under my weight. My mind raced with questions. Why was he wandering the house at this hour? Was he trying to tell me something through those drawings? At the top of the stairs, I paused. The hallway stretched ahead, dimly illuminated by the nightlight at the far end. I saw the faint glow of a flashlight under his bedroom door. I knocked gently. "Ethan, it's me. Are you okay?" The door creaked open a little, and I peeked inside. Ethan was sitting on the floor with the notebook in his lap, flashlight in one hand. He didn't look up immediately. When he finally did, his eyes met mine, wide, honest, almost adult in their intensity. "I couldn't sleep," he said softly. "I wanted to show you something important." I stepped inside and sat beside him. "What is it?" He flipped the notebook to a blank page and drew a small stick figure holding a lantern, standing under a large, dark cloud. Beneath it, he wrote, "People hide pieces of themselves, sometimes even from the ones they love." I swallowed hard. There was a sudden lump in my throat. How did a 10-year-old understand that kind of feeling? And why did it make my chest ache as if he were speaking directly to me? "Ethan," I said quietly, "what made you write this?" He shrugged, still staring at the page. "I just notice things. People's faces, how they act, what they say. Sometimes I think they're not as happy as they seem, like you tonight." My stomach tightened. Did he really see me? Or was this just a coincidence? I tried to force a smile, but it felt fragile. "I guess you could say I've had a long week," I admitted, hoping it sounded casual. He nodded slowly, as if that explanation was enough. Then, without another word, he slid the notebook toward me. I hesitated, then opened it carefully. The pages were filled with more sketches, more lines, some cheerful, some dark. But every once in a one seemed to focus on a single figure, alone, looking out a window or sitting quietly, lost in thought. "I draw what I feel," Ethan said finally, "or what I think people feel. Sometimes I can tell before they even say it." The weight of his words settled heavily on me. How could a child see so clearly into someone's heart? I felt both unsettled and strangely comforted. Maybe it was his way of understanding, or maybe it was me finally realizing how much I let people hide behind smiles. We sat together for a long while, in silence, except for the soft scratch of his pencil on paper. Outside, the wind rattled the branches, sending faint shadows across the room. Max shifted again, but stayed curled up at our feet. Finally, Ethan closed the notebook and looked at me with that same unwavering gaze. Do you ever feel like people only notice the outside of you? That no one really sees what's inside? I didn't answer immediately. The room felt smaller, more intimate, and I realized that I had been holding so much back from everyone. Ethan's question had opened a door I hadn't wanted to face. Before I could respond, the lights flickered. A sudden chill ran down my spine. I stood up, trying to shake off the unease, but the feeling lingered. There was something more tonight, something about Ethan's questions, the drawings, and the shadows that didn't make sense. I glanced at the notebook again. A page near the back caught my eye. It wasn't drawn yet. It was blank, waiting for him or for me. I didn't know, but something told me this weekend would reveal far more than I expected. And just as I reached out toward the page, I heard a whisper, not from Ethan, not from anyone, right behind me. "Do you see me?" The whisper made me jump. I spun around, but the hallway was empty. Only the dim glow of the nightlight illuminated the walls, casting long, twisting shadows. My heart raced. Max growled softly at my feet, his fur bristling. I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself. Maybe I was imagining things. The day had been long, and my mind was on edge. But the sound had been unmistakable, low and almost urgent. I glanced back at Ethan, who was still sitting cross-legged on the floor, eyes fixed on the notebook. He didn't seem startled at all. "You heard that too, didn't you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan tilted his head, studying me carefully. "I didn't hear anything," he said plainly. His calmness was unsettling. It made me doubt my own senses. I forced a small smile, trying to shake off the tension. "Maybe it was the wind," I suggested. But even as I said it, I knew the whisper had come from somewhere closer, somewhere inside the house. We returned to the notebook. Ethan flipped through more pages, pointing to sketches of people looking out windows, sitting in corners, lost in thought. "See," he said softly, "I notice things. I see when people are sad or worried or pretending to be happy." I swallowed hard, feeling exposed. He had already noticed the subtle lines in my face, the tightness in my shoulders. Somehow, a 10-year-old's perception had cut straight through my defenses. "I think," he continued, "sometimes people don't want to tell anyone what's really inside. They hide it, but you can still feel it." He paused and looked down at the notebook. "Like tonight, you're hiding something, and I can tell." I froze. He was right. More than right. A part of me wanted to laugh nervously. Another part wanted to run. How could a child see so clearly what I spent so long trying to hide? I don't know what you mean," I said, forcing a light tone, but my voice cracked slightly, betraying me. Ethan looked at me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable and captivated at the same time. "Do you ever feel like nobody really knows you?" he asked, folding the notebook closed. "Even people who love you?" I didn't answer immediately. I thought of Clara, of my friends, of the countless people who thought they understood me. And yet, standing there, I realized how much of myself I had hidden, even from them. Ethan watched me quietly, and in the silence, I felt a strange connection forming. It wasn't just curiosity. It was understanding, pure, unfiltered, and it frightened me how powerful it felt. Suddenly, a creaking sound from upstairs broke the quiet. I looked toward the staircase. Clara's bedroom light was on, but the door was slightly ajar. The noise was soft, almost like footsteps pacing slowly. "Did you hear that?" I asked Ethan, who just shrugged. He seemed unconcerned. "I think it's probably Clara," he said. "She checks on Max sometimes." I nodded, trying to believe him, but my unease deepened. The house felt different now, larger, quieter, almost alive in its shadows. Each creak and whisper seemed magnified, as if the walls themselves were watching me. I closed the notebook carefully. "Ethan," I said gently, "thank you for showing me this. You notice a lot more than people give you credit for." He nodded solemnly. "I try. Sometimes it's important to see what others can't." We sat in silence for a few minutes. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving a fresh, cool scent in the air. The wind whispered through the trees, tapping against the windows. I kept glancing at Ethan, trying to read his thoughts, but he remained calm, almost eerily composed. Finally, I decided it was time to try and get some rest. I helped him put the notebook on his bedside table and tucked him in. He gave me a small smile, one that seemed older than his years, and whispered, "Good night." As I walked back to the guest room, I couldn't shake the feeling that tonight was only the beginning. Ethan's question, his drawings, and that strange whisper, everything pointed to something deeper, something I wasn't ready to face. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Shadows from the streetlight outside danced across the room, and I felt a chill crawl down my spine. The notebook, the questions, the whispers, they weren't just coincidences. Something about this weekend was different. Something about Ethan was different. And just as I started to drift into a restless sleep, I heard it again. The whisper, faint but unmistakable, coming from somewhere in the darkness of the hallway. "Do you want to know the truth?" The voice pulled me awake instantly. My heart pounded as I sat up, trying to steady my breathing. The hallway outside the guest room was dim, the door cracked slightly open. I listened hard, waiting for another sound, but the house was silent. Too silent. I told myself it had to be my mind playing tricks on me. After everything Ethan had said, after the long day, maybe I was just hearing my own thoughts echoing back at me. Still, the unease lingered like a weight on my chest. I swung my legs off the bed and walked to the door. The floorboards creaked softly under my feet. The hallway stretched ahead, empty and still, lit only by the warm glow of the nightlight. I took a slow breath and stepped out. Clara's door was closed now, a thin strip of light showing beneath it. Max lay curled outside her room, his tail thumping once when he saw me. At least he looked calm, which eased my nerves a little. I headed downstairs for a glass of water. The kitchen felt safer, brighter, grounded in the everyday noise of the refrigerator humming. I gripped the cool counter and tried to clear my head. Ethan's words kept replaying. People hide pieces of themselves, sometimes even from the ones they love. Why had that struck me so hard? Maybe because it was true. I had been keeping so much inside these past few years. Stress, disappointment, quiet heartbreak I never told anyone about. I thought I was hiding it well, but that 10-year-old boy had looked straight at me and seen it all. I finished my water and headed back upstairs. As I passed Ethan's room, I noticed his door was slightly open. A faint light flickered inside. Curiosity tugged at me. I knocked gently. "Ethan?" I whispered. There was a rustle, then a soft, sleepy voice. "Come in." I pushed the door open. Ethan sat up in bed, the small lamp on his nightstand glowing softly. He rubbed his eyes and looked at me with that same steady gaze. "Are you okay?" he asked. His question surprised me. "I should be asking you that," I said lightly. "Did you get some sleep?" He shrugged. "A little." I was thinking. I sat on the edge of his bed, keeping my voice calm. About what? About you. I blinked, taken aback. Me? He nodded slowly. You seem lonely. The simplicity of the word hit deeper than I expected. I felt my throat tighten. Why would you think that? Because of how you look when you're quiet, he said. Your face changes, like you're remembering something that hurts. I swallowed. There was no judgment in his voice, only observation, only truth. You know, I said softly, grown-ups don't always show what they're feeling. Sometimes they think it's easier to pretend they're okay. Ethan looked down at his blanket. But that doesn't make it go away. No, I said, my voice barely a whisper. It doesn't. We sat quietly for a moment. The room felt lighter than earlier, as if speaking honestly had cleared some of the heaviness. Ethan glanced toward his nightstand, where the notebook rested. Can I show you one more thing? He asked. I nodded. He opened the notebook to a page near the back. A new drawing covered most of the paper. It showed a small figure standing in a bright doorway, looking out at a world full of light. The figure's back was turned, but something about it felt familiar. What does it mean? I asked. Ethan hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. It means you're not stuck, even if you feel like you are. There's always a way forward. My breath caught. The drawing, the message, the strange connection forming between us, it all made me feel something I couldn't quite name. Something warm, fragile, and overwhelming. But before I could respond, we heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, hesitant. Ethan looked up, eyes wide. That's not Mom, he whispered. My pulse quickened. Someone, or something, was standing just outside the door. I held my breath as the shadow paused, silent and still. The footsteps stopped just outside Ethan's door. I held my breath, trying not to make a sound. Max growled softly at my feet, his hackles raised. The hallway was empty, or at least it looked empty, but the air felt thick, heavy with anticipation. Ethan gripped the edge of his blanket, wide-eyed but quiet. Do you think it's a ghost? He whispered. I shook my head. No, probably just someone moving around, I said, though my voice sounded shakier than I wanted. My mind raced. Could it be Clara? But her bedroom door was closed. Was someone in the house? I stood up slowly. Ethan, stay here. Don't move, I instructed. I tiptoed to the door and peeked into the hallway. There was no one there. Just shadows stretching from the nightlight, the soft hum of the refrigerator from downstairs, and silence. I exhaled slowly, relief washing over me. But then I noticed it, a small slip of paper on the floor, just outside the door. I bent down and picked it up. Ethan's notebook! How had it fallen? I opened it quickly. On the page was a single sentence written in Ethan's careful handwriting. Sometimes the truth finds us when we're not ready. My chest tightened. That sentence. It was as if he had written it for me specifically. I looked at Ethan, who stared back with an expression I couldn't decipher. Was it innocence, wisdom, or something in between? Ethan, did you leave this here? I asked. He shook his head. No, I was asleep. I frowned. Then I noticed the shadows on the walls. They didn't look like ordinary shadows. They seemed to move, almost breathe, stretching toward us like silent fingers. A chill ran through me. Suddenly, a soft voice echoed from the hallway, barely audible. Are you ready to see? I froze. The words sent shivers down my spine. Ethan grabbed my hand, his grip surprisingly firm. "Don't worry," he whispered. "I think I know what it is." I followed him down the hallway. He led me to the living room, where the notebook lay on the coffee table. The pages flipped open on their own to a new drawing. This one was different, bright, vivid, almost alive. It showed a figure standing under a beam of light, reaching toward a door that glowed softly. "It's a story," Ethan said, his voice calm. "A story about finding the courage to face things you've hidden for too long, about letting people see you." I stared at the drawing, my eyes misting. It was like someone had peeled back a layer of my heart and laid it bare for me to see. I thought of all the times I had hidden my sadness, my doubts, my fears. And now this little boy, so young, so perceptive, was showing me the way out. We sat in silence for a long moment, both of us taking in the stillness of the house. Max rested beside us, sensing the change in energy. Outside, the rain had stopped completely. The world seemed peaceful, washed clean, as if the night itself had been holding its breath. Finally, Ethan spoke again. "You don't have to hide anymore. Not from me, not from anyone." I swallowed hard. There was so much I wanted to say, so many walls I had built over the years. But in that moment, I realized I didn't have to explain. Ethan's words, his drawings, even his questions, they had already reached me. I nodded slowly, tears threatening to spill. I think I understand," I whispered. Ethan smiled, a small, gentle smile that seemed to light up the room. "Good," he said, simply. I looked around the living room one last time, taking in the quiet shadows, the soft glow of the lamp, the notebook open before us. For the first time that night, I felt a calm I hadn't known in years. The questions, the whispers, the unease, they weren't gone, but they felt manageable. And maybe, just maybe, this weekend wouldn't just be about visiting my cousin. It would be about discovering something I had lost inside myself. I tucked the notebook carefully, gave Ethan a final smile, and headed to my guest room. The night felt lighter, the air warmer, and though I knew there would still be moments of doubt, I also knew I wouldn't face them alone anymore. As I closed my eyes, I could hear Ethan softly humming a tune from his room, and for the first time in a long while, I felt seen, truly seen. The weekend had started with a simple visit, but it ended with a quiet revelation. And sometimes, all it takes is one child, one question, to remind you of who you really are.